If I have one superpower in the kitchen, it is my ability to meal prep. And it's the reason why I've been able to thrive as a home cook over the last decade of my life. And in order to meal prep at a high level, I've had to develop a bunch of different hacks. And today I'm gonna be showing you 20 of them that make my meal prepping easier, quicker, more efficient, and more delicious. All right, so before we get into any actual cooking and meal prep, there's two quick organizational hacks that I gotta start off with to put you in the best place for success. And number one is having all of your pantry essentials in one convenient place. I consolidate my essentials with a Lazy Susan for easy access, but I've used a ton of different organizational tactics over the years in different kitchens. And in the studio, I have a few of these to separate out my fats, my vinegars, and my essential seasonings. And when I say essentials, these are the items that you're gonna be using nearly every time you go to cook. So having them in a spot that's either very close to where you're prepping your food, like this shelf right here, or having a system that's movable that can be brought over to where you're cooking your food will only save you time and enhance the efficiency of your meal prep. Now, another essential for meal prep success is having an assortment of prep bowls. This is huge, and it's where home cooks start to take inspiration from professional kitchens with that mise en place mindset. Now, of course, we don't need to be meased out every night for service, but as a home cook, when I get in the kitchen, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, which is why it's so important to have a variety of very conveniently located prep bowls to organize your ingredients as you prep them. And easily accessible is key here. Just like the essential pantry items, you want these prep bowls as close to your prep station as possible. I actually designed this prep table right here with shelves specifically to house all of these prep bowls, but at my house, the drawer under my kitchen island, I have dedicated both of them to my prep bowls. And of course, you want an assortment of sizes. Now, if you don't have a lot of room in your kitchen, you could get away with just a set of stainless steel prep bowls. But I personally like a variety of materials for different tasks in the kitchen. So my veggies are generally going in wood bowls, baking needs are ceramic and glass bowls, and the metal bowls are more all-purpose. And the last thing I'll say is you want some big mixing bowls, at least one. This is so important for prepping big batches of food or making a dough or seasoning some popcorn or a big salad, which brings me into my next hack, the kitchen sink salad. And this is a salad that I'm making nearly every day of my life because I can look in my fridge and I can offload those sort of miscellaneous ingredients that are hanging around in your fridge so you can simultaneously keep things from going to waste while getting a delicious salad on the other side. So of course you need a base of lettuce or hearty greens, which I try to just have stocked in the fridge at all times. And I'll chop that up, get that in the big ass bowl. Then I'm just scouring the fridge for potential salad ingredients. And here I've got some sugar snap peas. I've got some random carrots that were going to waste, some leftover hard-boiled eggs for my kids' dinner, and some leftover bread. Which brings me into my next hack. Of course, all of the ingredients that I can chop up for this salad, I will, but sometimes I do think it is just more effective and it's quicker to use a peeler over a knife. So for these carrots, I can peel off the outer skin right into the compost, and then I'll just start peeling them right into the salad. And the same thing goes for cheese. Rather than potentially dirtying up your cutting board, if it is a hard cheese, I generally just peel it right in and you get these nice shreds that mix very well into a salad. Now, of course, all of these diverse, yummy ingredients are gonna make your salad taste good, but in my opinion, the key to taking your salad to the next level is a crispy textural element. Now, of course, breadcrumbs, great option. Sometimes I'll do that with crispy tortilla strips. Anything that you can quickly crispify. And my favorite way to do this is the air fryer, which brings me into my next hack. If you were to dump in small little bits of food in your air fryer tray, it's just gonna fall right through those holes. That's a problem. Well, this might be the most obvious hack on this list, but it took me a while to realize that you can just remove the tray. It might be less efficient as circulating that convection air, but trust me, your air fryer doesn't care. You can just use your air fryer as a standard roasting tray without that rack. But for these breadcrumbs, of course, we need fat to fry them up, which brings me into hack number 6, making your own cooking spray. Now, if you've watched my air fryer videos, you know I love using cooking sprays because it just makes it so easy to evenly coat something with oil. But I have been trying to limit them since since of course they are single use, which is not great for the environment. They also can be filled with propellants and aerosols and different additives. So I actually bought a canister that's specifically designed for oil, and I just pop in some grapeseed oil or avocado oil, something neutral that can handle a higher heat. And it's not an aerosol-based spray, but this canister does have a pretty nice even misting ability. And of course I can just refill it when it's low versus throwing out the can every single time. And just like that, I've got some nice crispy breadcrumbs to finish off that salad. But of course we need a dressing, which brings me into hack number 7, the condiment bottle salad dressing. This doesn't always work out, but I love this hack. Whenever you have a condiment at the end of its line, it just has a little bit left in the bottle, and that condiment is gonna end up in your salad dressing. Just make the salad dressing in that bottle. Just like this honey here. Instead of using a ton of effort to scoop out those last bits, I'll make my dressing right in here by adding some lemon juice, some apple cider vinegar, some olive oil, a little bit of mustard, a little bit of mayo, and salt and pepper. And then with this honey, it needs a very aggressive shaking in order to remove all that honey from the side. And just like that, I've got a nice creamy honey Dijon vinaigrette that I can use throughout the week for the next few salads. And now that our salad's done, I'm moving on to 2 more organizational and efficiency hacks. Number 8 is having some type of kitchen towel or dish rag system. In the world of cooking, there's nothing that gets me more heated than when people just excessively use paper towels to clean up versus having a proper dish rag system. It's not that I don't use any paper towels. I have a roll right here for certain situations, but 90% of the cleaning load is happening with a dish towel. They are just much more effective at cleaning up, and of course, so much less wasteful. Now, I've been preaching this for years, but get yourself a pack or 2 of proper dish towels. I like the 15 by 25 inch range. And what I mean by having a system for your dish towels is they need a holding place in your kitchen that's convenient because you're gonna be using a lot. And then they need a place to go when they are dirty. In my studio, I have some hangers right on this prep station where they can chill out before they go in the laundry. At home, I just have a basket that they go into. Then when they build up and you have a solid load of laundry, they all go into the laundry, they get sanitized, they get folded back up, and the cycle continues. Now, coming in at the number 9 spot is having a dedicated compost bin somewhere in your prep station ready to collect your food scraps. Now, big shout out to Rachel Ray for really popularizing this concept. At least for my generation, with her 30-minute meal show, she always had some type of prep bowl where she was putting all of her food scraps, which is just a convenient way to get rid of your waste. But I would imagine, actually I could almost bet my life, that her food scraps were not ending up in the compost. They were probably going straight into the garbage. And I say that from experience, from being on different TV cooking sets and seeing the amount of food waste that goes down. It's just insane, but it was at least a start. Now, I've tried fancier looking tabletop compost bins. They don't work for me because I am just absolutely plowing through food scraps, which is why I currently like to use these heavy duty Cambro plastic containers. I have about 6 of these. They're multi-purpose. You can use them for all types of prep and storage, but also can multitask as a nice tabletop compost bin. Which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Wrinkle and their home composter system. Now, for me, it is very important to actually compost my food scraps and not just throw them in the trash. And there's a lot of different ways you can achieve this. When I lived in Brooklyn, there was actually a town system where you'd put your scraps right into a bin. The town would take them every week. When I moved out to Long Island and started a garden, I had space for a traditional 3-bin compost system for my garden scraps. And then for my food scraps, I have more heavy-duty plastic composters that keep out animals. But if you don't have space for a traditional composting system and you still want to compost your food scraps, that's where this Wrinkle home composter really becomes an amazing option. And what's unique about this composting system is that it comes with a compost starter that actually uses microbe technology to break down your food scraps in just a few days. And from testing out this system for a while now, one of my favorite parts is that it's completely hands-off. It's got a foot motion sensor to open the lid, you add in your food scraps, and the Wrinkle really takes care of the rest without touching any button. It slowly aerates the compost and uses the perfect amount of heat for efficient composting. I'll just keep adding in my food scraps throughout the week, and when they've broken down into compost, I'll scoop out around 2/3 of the bin, leaving some of the active compost behind for the next batch. And then after a few weeks of curing, it's ready to be added to the garden. And if you don't have a garden, you can give it to someone who does. So if you're interested in one of these composting systems, Wrinkle is offering $50 off either the Wrinkle Prime or Gravity. Just use the code MIKE50 be at checkout. All right, so moving on to number 10, which is a hack I've been obsessed with recently, which are stock ice cubes. Now this hack came from a bit of a problem I had, which is I buy a lot of whole chicken, generally around once a week, because it is much cheaper than buying individual pieces. But to really get the savings out of whole chicken, you need to use every piece, which means not just the prime pieces, but also the carcass of the chicken. So after I'm done breaking down the chicken, I'll take the carcass, I'll take the wings, I'll throw them in my air fryer, I'll roast them until they're nice and golden brown, I'll throw them in my pressure cooker to either pressure cook or slow cook overnight, and I've got delicious golden roasted chicken stock. Now the problem is when I am buying whole chicken, say once a week, that's a lot of stock, and the freezer gets packed out very quickly. So what I've been doing is taking that stock, reducing it down by around 90%, or until it can fill up one of these bigger square ice cube molds, and then I'll take the mold, throw it in the freezer, and when the cubes are frozen, I can transfer them over to a freezer bag. So basically I've made homemade instant bouillon cubes, which take up 95% less space than these big frozen stock containers. And I'll use these to deglaze a pan, I'll use them in soup. All you have to do is dilute them and you're good to go. And my number one use for these is making noodle soups. That's why I always have a pack of them in the freezer. And a simple recipe is just cooking down some ginger and garlic and some fat. I'll add some mushrooms, some snow peas, and a little bit of homemade miso paste. And then I'll throw a cube in there and just dilute it with water for a great miso chicken-based broth. Which brings me into hack 11, which are instant rice noodles. And I love these things because I'm eating different types of noodle soup multiple times a week, especially in the winter. So I try to avoid wheat noodles when I can because they can be very heavy, like ramen noodles. Whereas rice noodles are just much lighter. And why I love these instant type rice noodles is all you have to do is soak them in water for like 5 minutes. And then when you have your hot soup ready, once those rice noodles are soaked and malleable, you put them in the bowl, ladle over your hot soup, and then just cover the bowls with something and let them sit for about 5 minutes. And the noodles will heat up to the perfect consistency, which is much quicker than a classic rice noodle that needs to be soaked for a while or a wheat noodle that needs to actually be cooked. But to finish these noodles, we have another hack coming in at the 12 spot, which is scissors over knives. Again, like the peeler, this is kind of situational. There are certain circumstances during your prep where scissors are gonna be more convenient, they're gonna be quicker, and they might be easier to use than whipping out your knife and dirtying up your cutting board. So in this case, for a garnish, I've got some scallions from my garden, and I'll just take out the scissors, snip, 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 perfectly garnished soup ready to go. By the way, these anything bowls were a Mike G Noble collaboration. There were only 300 ever made, and there's about 120 left. So if you're interested, info below in the description. And moving on to the 13th hack, which is pressure cooked dry beans. Now I love having beans just prepped and ready to go in the fridge. I can throw them in a soup or salad or make a dip with them. And fresh cooked beans, much more superior than the canned stuff. But of course, they take time to prep. And the instructions are gonna tell you to soak them overnight and cook them until they're tender. But one of my favorite hacks is actually not soaking them. If you do have a pressure cooker, you can just pour in dried beans, add some water. Generally, your pressure cooker packet that it came with will tell you the different times for dried versus soaked beans, or you can just guesstimate and figure it out on your own. For me, it's around 14 minutes on pressure cooking, add a little bit of salt, and boom, perfect beans under 30 minutes, which is incredible. Now I'll save some of these beans in the fridge, but I am gonna make a soup with some of them as well. And I'll start off by rendering some bacon, which brings me into hack number 14. Always take advantage of rendered fat. I just put out an entire video on animal fats, and I've been pushing this for years on the channel. But just a reminder, whenever you have rendered something down and you have that residual fat, sometimes, yes, I'll pour it off. Actually, right here, I think that is some chicken fat, and I'll use that, say, the next day or sometime that week. But 90% of the time, I just cook something right away. Even if I wasn't planning on cooking, I'll take a random vegetable out of the fridge, chop it up, throw it in that fat, or I'll whip up a fried rice or some eggs, because whatever you cook in that fat is gonna have that delicious flavor, free flavor, and now you'll just have more meal prepped items ready to go. So for me, I cooked down those aromatics, added some squash, added some beans, threw in one of those stock cubes, and blended this down into a really beautiful soup, and then of course added back that bacon. Which brings me into hack number 15, which is being strategic with your freezing. Now this might seem like common sense, because it is, but it did take me some time to really get the hang of how to properly freeze your meal prep food. And for me, my best advice this is that if you're making a big batch of something like this soup, me and my wife will eat, say, 2 servings of this before it becomes a little boring. So what I like to do is right away be strategic and just freeze a container of it, which will ultimately avoid that soup going in the trash later that week when I'm bored and it goes bad. And then the next week even I can take that soup out and eat it, or of course eat it multiple months later. All right, we're moving on to the last few hacks, which all revolve around baking. And if you're gonna be a good meal prepper, like professional level, you've gotta be a good baker. There's no way around it. And my first hack is having a proper pantry organizational system. Now this is a very simple organizational concept, which is having certain areas of your pantry or your kitchen designated for certain pantry categories. So having all of your spices in one area where you know you can just walk over, boom, grab them, you're good to go. And same goes for baking. I like having one place for all of my baking goods. Ideally that is close to your prep station, but if it's not, you want some type of bin or basket that can be moved over to your prep station so you're just ready to pump out baked goods. Which brings me into hack 17, the all-purpose dough. Now this is something I'm doing nearly every single week. Even if I don't have a specific final product that I want to make, I'll just make an all-purpose dough. And I have a full recipe below on the specifics for this, but the general concept is making a dough with really any flour combination that's around 65 to 75% hydration. And then once that dough is fermented, I made a whole short video on this that went viral, you can make all types of things, from pita to pretzel buns to focaccia, of course pizza. Sometimes I'll just turn it into sandwich bread, so I have that for my kids throughout the week. Bread is life, and having it around, very helpful for meal prep. But another thing that really helps me survive the week is just having an endless stream of baked goods. We're talking waffles, pancakes, muffins, and most of you know this by now, but I freestyle all of my baked goods. I will use recipes for inspiration, but just like cooking, I freestyle when I get in the kitchen to bake. And sometime over the last century of culinary history, baking became this scientific, systematic thing where you have to follow recipes, and every recipe is going to tell you to do one thing: separate those dry ingredients and those wet ingredients in separate bowls. Which brings me into hack 18, dry and wet ingredients in one bowl, baby. And I don't just mean dump everything in one bowl and mix it all in, but the way I have been making baked goods for about a decade now with a lot of success is I'll start with my wet ingredients, I'll build out that base, and then I'll scour my pantry for different flours. In this case, for these muffins, I have like 7 different flours, and I call these vibe muffins because I'm really just vibing out the flour combinations that just feel right in the moment, mixing things together, hoping for the best. But ultimately, since I've made these muffins so much, I know the final consistency that's right. So I just mix in enough of the flour until I get that right consistency, and I'll pop them in a muffin tray and they are ready for the oven, which brings me into hack 19. Because I'm freestyling, I don't have a recipe that's gonna tell me a relevant time to go off of. So I need to figure out when these muffins are done, and the way I do that is by using instant read thermometers like this. And really the main thing to understand here is that baked goods are generally cooked through around 200 to 210 degrees Fahrenheit. I like to pull them a little bit lower on that scale because they do continue to cook after they're out of the oven. And I'll use this for bread as well. Same numbers go for bread making, which to me is just the easiest way to know when to pull something out of the oven. Which brings me into my final food hack, which is labeling your food containers, not just for the freezer. That's the obvious one. If you don't label something and it goes into the freezer, there's a very good chance it's never coming out of that thing until it goes in the trash. But when I do have the time, and I'm not being lazy, throwing a label on food containers that are going in the fridge of your meal prepped items, it will almost guarantee that you waste less food. There's just something about opening your fridge, seeing the labels on there, knowing exactly what you have, that's just gonna be a little bit more inspiring to actually use it up. And I am all about less food waste. It's one of my number one goals when I'm in the kitchen and prepping food. And those are my 20 biggest food hacks to help you optimize your meal prep. If you're looking for more meal prep videos, click right here.